You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Now, Don, we have our very special guest in. Special because he's a friend of mine. I cohabit in the same tower as him at the Docklands. And I played golf with him on Monday, and he will be interested to know that I've already relayed the story of how my golf day started by me going to the wrong office, thinking it was the office of the golf club, and it turned out to be a house of ill repute, Don. And I had an unusual conversation with the lass behind the counter, thinking she was the person taking the golf bookings. And this went on for about 10 minutes till she said, do you all want a happy ending? And I told our guest that, and he was particularly amused at that, because I don't think he or I have had a happy ending, props, ever.
No, don't talk for him.
Perhaps ever at one of those establishments.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying. So that's how our golf day went on Monday. It was a very enjoyable day. But this man, I'll tell you who he is straight now. He's called, his name is Dally Messenger III. He is... I'll tell you why he's called the third in a minute, but he's Dally Messenger, and he is a star in his own right. Because he has a very famous surname. We'll get onto that shortly, but we're introducing him as the main person because he is a star. He is a civil celebrant. I'm not sure if he still practices, but he was the first in the world, first civil celebrant. He's an author. He's a publisher, he's an editor, he's a founder of the civil celebrant movement in certainly Australia and possibly the world. He'll tell us just exactly how accurate that statement is. His education and scholastic CV is so immense I couldn't read it out. It goes literally for 3 pages on the Google machine, where we get most of our information from. But I put this in because I don't know what this means. But he is an STB in theology. I'll ask him that in a minute. I'll just get finished with the introduction. He's written books on the history of celibacy, not celibacy, not, abstaining from sex, celibacy. He's written books on secular weddings and funerals, the history of rugby league he's written books on, Dance Australia, the history of Melbourne radio. These are the books he has written. He's married. I know Remy, his wife. She was a star in her own right back in America, I think. We'll ask him about that. So I'd like to formally introduce you and our listeners to Dally Messenger III. So welcome, Dally, to You Cannot Be Serious.
Thank you, Sam. That was a very...
and now you've got to come...
That's the best introduction I've ever heard, actually.
Well, that's good.
There's one little correction. I wasn't the first celebrant. I was the first person to apply to become a celebrant. And they lost my file in the...
Well, I was going
to... I was one of the first.
No, I'm going to get onto that, but I just wanted to just give that as a round off. So just make sure you're speaking to the microphone, please, Dally.
Yeah.
So...
well, could I ask the first question?
Because let's just
I'm
get out of the way.
I'm fascinated by his name.
No, so that's... we don't want to dwell on the fact of who his grandfather is anymore, because he is a star in his own right, but we should get that out of the way first. So... Dally Messenger is the grandson of the famous Dally Messenger, of which the equivalent to the Brownlow Medal in AFL, the equivalent in rugby league is called the Dally M Medal, and that's his grandfather. And you can ask him
Dally,
probably how that started.
Should you be corrected? You wouldn't be the third, because your grandfather, that was a nickname, wasn't it?
Well, I've got a theory on that, Don. In English law, in Australian law, if you use a name, common usage, it becomes your name. So he used Dally all his life.
But his name was Herbert Henry.
He was Herbert Henry Dally Messenger.
But he wasn't christened.
No, he wasn't christened Dally. No.
Why was he called Dally?
Well, William B. Dally was the Premier of New South Wales. actually quite a distinguished one. The public subscription put a statue of him up in Hyde Park in Sydney, and he was a friend of the family. He actually owned a castle at Manly, and the Messenger brothers used to row him across Sydney Harbour in the days before ferries to his castle. He was Premier of New South Wales. He was Attorney General in the 1880s. And
hang on, the bridge wasn't across then, was it?
no, the bridge. Where was the bridge? The 1930s.
Yeah.
No.
yeah. No, the bloke ran across with a sword.
Yeah.
The horse.
Lang was the
Jack
president.
Lang, yeah,
Jack, he
that's
was
right,
the
yeah.
Premier of New South.
Well, Mr. Daly, I don't know. He apparently valued isolation. They rowed him across Sydney Harbour, and he had a castle. He actually built a castle. So he was a friend of the family. He was a portly kind of character. The little baby Herbert Henry was a portly character.
That's your grandfather.
That's my grandfather.
Yep.
And he was...
who the medal's named after.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he was playing around. They said he looks like a little Dally. So when he was just a baby, they named him Dally. Everyone called him Dally except his mother.
So you've adopted the formal name Dally as your name?
I was christened. My father was christened Dally, and I was christened Dally.
Oh, your father?
Yeah,
yes.
my father, Dally the second, I suppose you'd say. But,
Well,
and
you are a remarkable person, Dally, because that list of stuff which has just only scratched the surface is quite extraordinary. So we should ask you, you say you weren't the first civil celebrant as such, but you were appointed, I think, by the Attorney General Lionel Murphy back in the 70s of last century.
That's right.
And how did you become... I was told that you were the pioneer of it in the world.
Well,
is that vaguely accurate?
Well, in the sense that I was the first ever to apply.
Well, that'd make it accurate.
I think that's been a bit exaggerated Lionel Murphy picked me out to progress the. He formed an association, and he made me the secretary of it, and he made it clear to me that he hoped I'd follow on when he left the Parliament, that I would follow on and develop the civil celebrant program. And he had his ideas and I had mine, and I was made the national spokesperson, I was made the secretary. As I said, I was also commissioned by him to communicate with all the celebrants. You can imagine, well, you were around in 1973.
Yep.
Or 1974.
To tutor them or to...
Yeah, well, trunk line calls were very expensive.
Yep.
Letter writing was labour intensive. You couldn't... And we didn't have... People were made celebrants and they didn't know what to do. So he made it my job to tell them how to construct a ceremony, what to put in it, and I used to use the Gazette machine, post it out to everybody. There was only 30 or 40 of us for a long while. There's now.
But why,
9,000.
the question I asked, why were marriage celebrants, why was there a need or a thing for, because at that time you just married in the church.
Yeah.
Why marriage celebrants?
Yeah, very good question. First of all, people did get married in the church, Don. 80% of people went to church or were strongly affiliated. There's just the Catholic Church and the Church of England, and the other churches were just sort of fringe churches. But both the Catholic Church and the Church of England refused, or Anglican churches people call it, they refused to do second marriages. The
Church of England did too?
Yeah, Church of England. It was sort of high church.
Well, they're very closely related, aren't they?
They're
Church
very
of England
closely related, and they were closer then as far as ritual and rules go. So what happened was, if a person's marriage broke up or they were divorced, they weren't allowed to get married in the church. So they went to the registry office, and actually this is a good tale that puts your question in setting. The registry office was the most humiliating place you can imagine. Had a long bench, and people who wanted to get legally married sat on a long bench 4 by 4. That's the bride, the groom, 2 witnesses. And a poker-faced official would say, next 4, please, come over here. All right, madam, you say this. Sir, you say this. Sign here, please, sign here. Witnesses, sign here, sign here. Would you move sideways, please? Next 4, and that was how marriages were done. Lionel Murphy got in there one day, I think it was as a witness, and he viewed all this and he said, this is humiliating people for no good reason. Now, what had happened a few years previous to this, and I was onto this, that's why I applied, but Garfield Barwick, the Liberal, he bought all the marriage acts from all the various states into one federal marriage act. Big deal at the time. People would, like was just headlines of the paper. I can still remember as a young person. Anyway, he put a provision in the act that he could appoint the Attorney General of Australia could appoint any person at all to do a marriage. They didn't do it. They knocked me back because he knocked me back originally because I wasn't a religious person.
Hang on.
No,
What do you mean you weren't a religious person?
Well, I wasn't a member of a religious denomination.
Weren't you a priest?
Yeah, but I'd left that behind.
No, so.
Yeah, I was a priest for about 18
Well,
months.
what do you mean you weren't a religious person? You were.
Well, I wasn't. Good clarification. I wasn't representing a religious denomination. I'd left the priesthood. I told them to stick it up their junk.
And because you were disgruntled with the Catholic Church for a number of reasons.
A number of reasons.
And that's why you started this secular branch of being married.
Yeah.
Non-religious branch.
Yeah, I knew
Is
the
that
marriage.
right?
Yeah, I knew the Marriage Act. I knew, and there was the officials in the registry office. They were civil celebrants, but not in the sense that we are now. So there was this provision in the Act, and because I had some friends, and I just sort of applied for it as a one-off originally. I had some friends that just didn't want to go to the registry office. They'd been there. It was so horrible that they just couldn't face the indignity of it. So I applied and I got refused. I'd left the priesthood some time before, 1968, because of the birth control crisis.
That?
No, not just that.
Why did you go into it in the first
hang
place?
on,
That's
Don.
what I want to know.
No,
Good question. Good question.
Just finish that. Abortion. What about the questionable sexual activities of the clergy?
Yeah, well, that wasn't known much then.
No.
What I did know was when I got into the priesthood, I soon got the message that a lot of my confreres who were supposed to be celibate had girlfriends on the side.
Exactly right.
And, not that many, but enough to.
Geez, I went around Ireland with one ear, a bird on the side,
And a bit of pedophilia.
No pedophilia at that stage that we knew about.
Okay, good, yep.
And I was pretty naive, Sam.
Yep.
Don. I didn't even know what a homosexual was. I was. And you asked me the question, so I left because of all these issues.
But wouldn't you have known about this when you're doing your training?
No,
What?
you wouldn't. You were very isolated and protected. It was a monastic.
How old were you when you went into the priesthood or started
I
training?
was 21.
And you
But
really?
most went in when they were 16, 17. But I was a bit different. I went in when I was 21. It was the time of you asked me why, it was the time of the nuclear war hanging over society. Kennedy. And,
The Bay of Pigs in Cuba.
And we all thought the world was going to end. It was going to be some silly bastard would press that button soon and would. So I kind of, in my naive way, I thought, well, we've got to stop this threat of warfare. Is there anything we can do? Well, only thing I could think of was I'd try and make people better, and I saw the church as a mechanism whereby I could do something to improve people.
That's where you got the idea.
That's where it started.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And so that was my main reason. You know, we all do things for mixed motives, as you know, but that was my main reason.
You're not a rebel.
Well, I'm classed as a rebel by everyone who knew me in the seminary, you know. But I can't. It's hard to analyse why I kept it. I should have walked out at some stage, but I got ordained. I can tell you why. Because of the Vatican Council, I thought the church was going to really improve. The Catholics had a council, and it was a big deal at the time. But all the things that seemed to...
You can pull that closer to you if you...
Yeah,
that's
okay.
right. We just
All right,
don't want to
good.
miss what you say. Yep.
Can you hear me out there?
Absolutely. No, we can see if we got the bars going here.
Oh,
Yep.
good. You know, so...
I think you've got to set the stage too, because this is in the mid-60s, and really the age of questioning really didn't come in until about 1966, 67, and then we started to young people started to question, you know, this
everything.
yes, everything. I was going to say older people, establishments, and whatever else. But prior to that, it was a very conservative world.
Very. And the 1960s, everything we say they are, you know, it was really revolutionary in so many ways, and the church included. I stuck in there because I thought there'd be big changes, and they'd be changes for the better. And I thought celibacy would go out the door as one thing. But then it didn't happen like that. The council did some very good things, but nobody took any notice of it. People were so innately and emotionally conservative that just dismissed it.
So is it accurate to say, Dally, that Australia was the first country in the known world to promote celebrants, and you say you weren't quite the first person, but you applied, and Lionel Murphy wanted you to instruct people how to do it, and the rest of the world followed. So
exactly, yes.
Well, that is certainly being the pioneer of it, worldwide, Dally.
And I will take credit for the fact that I got them all organised in the early days. I kind of communicated, I remember I created a naming ceremony in 20 minutes, and it went into a book the next day. But because people were wanting, and funerals were a big, we started off with marriages, and that was, I can't describe to you the joy people had that they didn't have to go to the registry office. You know, it had
or the church.
Yeah, or the church, and a lot of, you don't have to tell you two guys, the feminists didn't want to go to the church because they had to love, honour and obey. The wording wasn't suitable. You know, the father is head of the man is head of the house, as Christ is the head of the church. You know, all these. This is why words are important. So I was the one who went to the library and consulted people who I thought might know, and I gathered readings and I wrote welcomes, and so did other people as well. But they all came to me and I shared them, and it was a learning curve. But what Lionel Murphy was very strong on was ceremonies had to have substance, they had to have meaning, they had to communicate values, and they had to have, above all things, dignity. he was really out for. I'm sounding a bit serious, aren't I? It was really for the dignity of secular
integrity and
and dignity,
morality.
But also other things were changing too. You're talking about marriage, but also the end of a marriage. Back then, there was a blame. There was things such as adultery, this and this on grounds for divorce.
Exactly right.
And, you know, it was a long, drawn-out process, but I think they got that back to 12 months or a period that people could move on.
If you think the Family Law Act's bad, you should have seen it in those days. You know, you're quite right. There was just... and Lionel Murphy, one-person battle for the Family Law Act.
He was Minister for what?
He was Attorney General in the Whitlam government, but he was a bipartisan person who got a lot of things done. He was friends of Andrew Peacock and the Liberals, and he swung the Senate on a number of things like capital punishment. But the big achievement of his is what you just say, Don. It was the Family Law Act. No fault divorce, irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. Before that, it was... the main two grounds were desertion after 5 years or adultery. So people faked adultery all over the place. You know, you'd hire a photographer, you'd hire a woman if you're a man, you know, or vice versa. You'd go to a motel, you'd get into bed, and then at a certain time the photographer would burst in, take a photo. Now, the judges all knew this. It was such a farce. But the worst thing was, even in those days, it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Exactly.
So when Murphy came in and got his Family Law Act through as a bipartisan thing, the cost of a divorce went down from $200,000 to $400.
$400.
$400.
Yep.
An amicable divorce cost you $400. If you had problems with children and property, you went a bit longer than that. But an amicable divorce, it was just based on no fault, and people were so used to blaming and charging and one person's right and the other person's wrong. Well, present company and everyone listening to this knows that no such thing as one person right and one person wrong. It's a grey area. There's no black and white. So now I know what you're getting at, Don. Suddenly people could get divorced and they'd longed for years to get married. Marriage is very strong in the culture. And I remember going to the early weddings, and I remember one in particular where people were very casual, I thought, and I got there and I couldn't get a park in the street, and I got into the back garden or the rear garden, whatever you want to call it, and it was with flowers, and they had a barbershop quartet, and they told me they were only going to have 2 witnesses, and there were hundreds there. And when I got to the vows, and I said, started the woman on the vows, she burst into tears and said, I've been waiting for this for years, this opportunity.
Would it be fair to say there's more civil marriages than church marriages nowadays?
Well, absolutely. We do 80% of the weddings now. 80%.
And you're talking about them being sort of productions, and the person who's taken that to just another level is a great friend of yours and mine, who you mentored, the great Greg Evans.
Yeah, great Greg Evans. Greg's brilliant. He's got a number of advantages. I'm proud of him. So are you.
Yeah, and we've got upstairs the great Shelley. She's a marriage.
I hear that.
I'll introduce you to. She's.
Paul's,
I don't know if she's listening to this, but she's up there. She's.
Paul stroke Ivan Sullivan was telling me about Shelley, and he told me to tell Don to go easy on me, but it's all...
Now listen, you're a little bit left of centre. In what you've done. I want to ask you about a couple of things. The dancing thing.
Yeah.
So just quickly, then I want to get onto Russia and I want to get onto Iraq.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So fire away.
Well,
Right,
you,
now,
wrote,
tell me about the dancing thing.
you wrote a book on Dance Australia because you ran ballroom dancing contests?
No, it wasn't
No, you
like
didn't.
that. No, it wasn't like that. A bit different to that.
Okay.
I had 5 daughters, 2 stepdaughters, 3 natural daughters, and they were all in a dance school. And
What, ballroom dancing?
No, ballet.
Oh, okay.
Jazz ballet.
Right, yeah.
Choreography competitions.
Yeah.
They went to a Stedfords,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
A Stedfords.
Yeah.
Great word.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah.
Ballarat had one,
Welsh
didn't it?
word.
Bet you can't spell it.
No, I think
Go
it
ahead.
starts with EIS.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
something like that.
Yeah.
This is Shelley. I know this
Hello,
is
Shelley.
This
You're
is
a
not
married
great.
celebrant, I believe.
This is not great audio stuff because you can't see Shelley, but Shelley is a celebrant in her own right and very popular and very
Yeah,
good.
that's
And
right.
this is Dally, who started it off in the world. This is Dally Messenger. He's the reason that marriage celebrants are in the world. He started it.
That's all right. No, I hope you're going well.
I'm loving it.
Check it out with you later.
We can't hear Shelley. No, you can't hear what Shelley's saying, but because she's not on mic.
Yeah,
but,
that's all right.
yeah.
So back to normal. I'd like to tell you before we get on to the dance thing that how Lionel Murphy. You asked me this before, and I didn't quite finish. Lionel Murphy went to Whitlam and said, "I want to appoint people as civil celebrants. This is my concept." And Whitlam was pretty cool about it, so he consulted the Labor Party. His friends in the Labor Party, and they said, "Don't touch it. The churches will slaughter you." And he went to his own personal staff, George and Egas, you might remember him. And
Yep.
people. They said, "Don't, Lionel, don't." You know, like he was a, what do you call it? A wild cannon on the deck. And
Loose cannon.
A loose cannon.
Yep.
That's right. And then he went to the public service and they said, "Oh, no, Minister, please don't minister." Anyway, so what he did was he waited till everyone went home. Everyone went home one night and he sat down at his desk and he got to a typewriter.
This is Murphy.
This is Murphy, Lionel Murphy, because it's good folklore stuff and it's true because he told me himself. Anyway, he put a bit of paper in the typewriter. He typed out the appointment for Lois Darcy.
For who?
For Lois Darcy. She was a beautiful young woman in her 20s.
She was
from Queensland.
She was actually the first.
She was actually the first.
Yeah, civil
And
celebrant.
she was a good first.
Yep.
Lionel used to boast about how dignified she was. That was his big word. Anyway, so he put the paper in the typewriter. He typed the appointment. He found an envelope. He addressed it. Had trouble finding a stamp, but he found a stamp in the end. And he walked down to the nearest post box. And he posted it. And that's how it all started. Really, and it's been, you asked me how many weddings we do 80% of the weddings. And we do 80% of the funerals. So it's been, because there's been a decline in church attendance in the years since because of the pedophilia and stuff you mentioned.
But also the questioning back in the 60s too. We all started to question, didn't we?
Oh, yes, a big part of it. Everything was questioned.
Well,
that's true.
now, Don, there's so
Now,
much. So you
now
asked
on to
about
dance.
the
I want to
dance.
know about Russia.
No, you asked about the dance.
Oh,
yeah.
You wrote a book on Dance Australia.
Yeah, it's a bi-monthly magazine, and what happened was I got kind of into publishing, and because of a couple of the books you mentioned, and what I realised after a while, I wasn't going to eat. I was doing enough weddings, but you'll appreciate this. There's a downside to being a celebrant, and that is your nights and your weekends can get taken up. So I thought I'd want to do less celebrancy, do it well, but also I needed a regular income.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, a group of dance teachers, about 5 of them, took me out to dinner at the Victoria Hotel, and they said, "We think you're capable of starting a magazine for us." Because I got to know them through my daughters, dancing. So in my naivety, I thought I'll give it a go. I'll give it a try. And it was quite a struggle at first because nobody said, what do you know about dance? But in what happened when I was editor of Dance Australia, I was extremely popular because I wasn't part of the dance world. I wasn't in any factions. I wasn't in any groups.
And how big is the dance world?
Oh, it's big.
Big?
Yeah. Well, you've got the Australian Ballet, you've got the Sydney Dance Company, you've got 3, Queensland Ballet, you've got them in every state.
So a successful publication.
Yeah,
it was.
and also we did cover ballroom dancing. I think I discovered Jason Gilkison and Peter Roby as far as media publicity goes. I gave them a cover story and they became world champions. So every kind of dance, including the small ballet school and...
So Delhi, we're speaking to Delhi Messenger. So we could speak for a long time on dance, but if we don't cover some of these things, we'll run out of time altogether.
Yeah.
So then you did the history of Melbourne radio.
Yeah.
How did you come to write a book on that?
Well, one of the celebrants was the closest friend of Nancy Lee.
Yep.
Have you heard of Nikki and Nancy?
Yep,
Lee?
absolutely.
The chums of Chatterbox Corner.
Yep.
And
Did Nicky do a show with
Graham
Kennedy?
Graham
Yep.
Kennedy.
3UZ?
Graham
Nicky and
Kennedy.
Graham, yep.
Graham Kennedy wrote the
Forward.
for me.
Did he?
Yeah. It's
Wow.
I've got one copy of the book left.
Oh,
I
I'd
must
love
show
to
it
see
you
it.
later.
Yeah, love to see it.
You can download it from an e-book. But Graham Kennedy, and he came to the opening at the Camberwell Civic Centre, the big hall there, and it was packed. All the all the chums of Chatterbox Corner were there, and they sang the song, being a chum
Being a chum is fun.
That is why I'm one.
Happy and always happy, always gay, chummy at work and chummy at play. Laugh away your worries, never be sad or glum. Everyone loves to be a chum, chum, chum. Holy mackerel. Yeah.
I've still got the record of that, by the way. Then there was a few songs they had that were very catchy. Well, Nancy Lee, she won the Announcer of the Year, and she had all this stuff. She'd written memos, and she had beautiful photos. I've put them all up on Flickr. Anyone can download them and help themselves to them. But she said, look, I'm coming to the end of my days. I want to put this on the record. So I got all the stuff, and I went down to Bonio, down towards
Bonio, the back of Rosebud.
Yeah, back of Rosebud.
Yeah.
I had a mate had a house there, and he gave it to me. So I locked myself away for a week, and I had scissors and paste, and I stuck things together, and that was how I did the first
So
draft.
the history of Melbourne radio with people that were on the radio in that era,
Yes, yeah. And
like Jack Davey and
Jack
was he
Davey,
on Jack- yeah,
and
Terry Deer.
Bob Dyer, but they were more. Bob Dyer was more Sydney, and Jack Davey.
Oh yeah, the
Norman
concert.
Swain,
Norman Swain,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Billy Bouncer or something.
yeah, and Bert
Newton.
Newton,
Yep.
who, by the way, when the book came out, he interviewed me 3 times. He was wonderful.
Did he?
And, yeah.
But to put it in context, radio was big. There wasn't television, and this was the only thing of communication, wasn't it? Radio.
Norman
Yeah.
Banks.
And there were a number. There were a
Norman
number,
Banks, yes, yeah.
number of radio stations. It was very competitive, and it was big. And then television took over from radio.
Nicky had 70% of the ratings.
Did he really?
Yeah, and Graham Kennedy was his fall guy.
Yeah.
And they were so successful.
And,
when it came to the chums of Chatterbox Corner, they reckon you could fire a cannon down any street of Melbourne at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever.
What was the bloke who used to say, "Strike me lucky"? What was his name?
That Mo McCackey.
Mo
was it?
McCackey.
Mo McCackey.
All
But he was a vaudevillian, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was on the radio.
Cop this young
Yeah.
Harry.
And-
and what did he say? She was only a jockey's daughter, but
Gosh.
every horse manure.
That's right. That's correct.
But they played in front of audiences too, didn't they? They'd have
They
the
did.
radio station or the microphone set up on a stage, and then they'd have an audience.
I could give you a bit of a risque one on those. She was only the butcher's daughter. I won't tell you what the ending of that is, but her undercut was dripping.
Yeah.
Now, Dally. What about someone like not Bob Dyer? I was going to. Ormsby Wilkins, is he a bit later, was he?
Yeah, he's a bit later.
Wilkins on 3AW, all those people.
I don't see him in the photograph.
No, I see, yep.
Yeah. But Nicky, I got a lot from Graham Kennedy. Used to ring me up at night, and
did he?
Yeah. He look, perhaps I shouldn't say this, but
perhaps you should.
Perhaps I should. He struck me as a lonely person.
Oh, I would say he's very. I'd say he was absolutely lonely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But he was brilliant comedic.
Unbelievable
mind,
when the cameras went on him.
Very shy and reticent.
Off stage he was.
Yep.
But that's with all of them, wasn't there? They're all troubled souls behind the scenes.
Yeah, this is what happens. I can tell you one little funny thing. He said you used to ring him. I had his number. I'd ring him up, and he'd say, and the voicemail would come on, and he'd say, "This is Graham Kennedy. I'm either out or asleep or both."
And he used to call himself, and people changed it because it wasn't politically correct. He used to call himself Gay Kennedy.
Yeah.
Which was
applied. Grey, wasn't it?
No, that people then used to say it was Grey. But it was Gay. And he, not because he was gay, but because it was just a shortened version of Graham. He said, I'm Gay. And I mentioned that to Bert one day, and he said, you're absolutely right, but people changed it when it became a bit politically incorrect to say someone was gay, but it was never because he was gay. It was just he used to call himself, instead of Graham Kennedy, he used to call him Gay.
Gay.
Yeah. GG, Gay. Yeah, Graham Kennedy. So
I want to hear about Russia.
I don't know what Russia is. But
how did you know that?
I know a few things, my friend. I'm not a pretty face. So tell me, when did you go to Russia?
1986. I went there when I was editor of Dance Australia for the International Ballet Competition, and we had Kelvin Coe and Elizabeth Toohey.
Yeah.
And a guy called Burke. Walter Burke, he was the choreographer. Anyway, I got a grant from the government, and I was commissioned from all the Australian newspapers, none of which published anything I wrote, by the way. But anyway, I went to the International Ballet Competition. I went twice in 1986. This is the first time. And I was, I suppose, 5 or 6 weeks there. And gradually, all the people from all over the world got eliminated, and it was a wonderful moment when Elizabeth Toohey, coached by Kelvin Coe, Elizabeth Toohey and David McAllister, who later became director of the Australian Ballet, but they won. They won
in Russia.
In Russia, and they were enormously popular. To my joy, I suppose that's the right word, I found them on the internet the other day. They're on YouTube.
Wow.
It's not a very good video, but
did you meet Bobby Helpman?
Their winning dance. It's there.
Come across Robert Helpman, or was he a bit before or after?
I remember, when you get one of those phone calls, I picked up the phone one day and said, Bobby Helpman, how Della? I can tell. Hello, Sir Robert.
That's right, Bobby. I know. I've met Bobby a couple of times. Yeah, that's exactly how he. Now, Dally.
He would have liked your tinted hair.
It
was before its time.
Liked a lot of me. Now, Dally, So Dance Australia, you've written a book.
Hang on, what about Iraq? I want to know about pushing. I want to push the bike. You pushed a bike around Iraq.
I did.
Why did you do that?
Well, I worked it out in my rather stupid way, as it turned out, that I couldn't speak Arabic. When I was at Harleybury, I was teaching ancient history, biblical studies and that, as a secular subject. And my first marriage had broken up, and I was kind of had a bit of super which you could cash in those days. So I thought, before anyone else gets it, I'm going to spend this.
And what year was there? Give us
Iraq was 78.
So this is when the Shah was the Shah.
No, Saddam Hussein.
Was in 78?
No, in Iran.
That's the Shah of Persia was in Iran.
Yeah. No.
Iraq, you're talking.
I went first of all to Tehran, but I only stayed there a couple of days. The Shah was in charge of Iran,
right?
But Saddam Hussein was in charge of Iraq.
Yeah.
Way back then.
Yeah, in 78. And I've got to tell you, people are so wrong about this. He was a despot. He was a ruthless despot. If you raised your head above the parapet, you got a bullet in your head. But what he did, he nationalised the American oil companies, and he spent all the money on the people. Like the Saudi Arabians did similar things, and they've spent it all on the royal family. But he increased the pay of teachers. He put hostels in every village. Government subsidised rice and sugar and so on. So on the surface, anyway, and then the Kurds and the Shiites and the Sunnis, well, he was a Sunni himself. They all loved him.
How long can they continue? Because they're really dependent on oil.
Yeah.
How long can they continue? Oh, I suppose it's how long's a piece of string. How long's the oil stay around for? Have they got a backup to oil?
Well, Don, to tell you the truth, George Bush went in and bombed the bejesus out of them, and they're a mess at the moment. They're trying to get a government together. So and of course the Kurds have isolated themselves. The Sunnis and the Shiites are trying to come to peace with each other. They've still got oil, but I don't know how they're going to kind of
exist in the future.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to. I don't know how they're going to rise out of the ashes. I just.
You pushed a bike around Iraq.
Well, I did for a while, but then I found this: that if I hitchhiked, if I was going down to Basra or around Nazaria or up to Mosul, I just walked out on the road and I hitched.
How old were you?
About 36.
God.
37. And the first car.
How old are you now, Deli? For our, I know how old you are, but just for the edification of our listeners. You've had
I'm
an
85
extraordinary life and career.
Well, I really thought I'd be dead by 60. And so many things, but. I can't believe I'm 85, but I am.
Someone's looking down on you, Deli.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if we understood the mysteries of the universe, Sam, yeah. Well,
so it was quite safe travelling around there?
Oh, it was better than safe. When I was picked up as a hitchhiker, I diced the bike then. I had a Bickerton bike in a bag you could carry and assemble it. But I used to go out on the highway, no matter where I was going. The first car would pick you up. They'd drive you to, you'd say where you were going, and in broken English you'd communicate. And they'd take you to these tea houses. You were never allowed to buy them a cup of tea, the tea in glasses, with sugar. And then when you got to, I remember I came back to Baghdad once and I said, look, just drop me here. I'm going to the Alibaba Hotel. And the guy said, no, look. And they were all the same. They'd take you where you were going.
So they went out of their way?
Went out of their way to look after the stranger.
So we don't get the right picture, do we?
No, we don't. And everyone said things like to me when I was going to Iraq, they said, watch your wallet and do this, You could put your wallet in Baghdad railway station. You could leave it there for a day and come back and it'd still be there. Well, this is in my time, like there's been a war.
Yeah,
since,
lots of luck with that now.
Yeah, there's been a war since.
So Delhi, so there's Iraq and Russia and Dance Australia and Melbourne Radio and books on secular and weddings
History
and
of rugby
funerals.
league.
So I'm just about to say, and you've written a book on the history of rugby league. Well, now, how would you possibly research that? And I know what your interest would be because you're absolutely number one Storm member. And you go up to the Dally M presentations. You're invited by Rugby League Australia. How possibly would you research the history of rugby league?
Well, Sam, I kind of realised Dally kept a scrapbook, and this is going through with the All Blacks, he got an honorary New Zealander for one season over in England. Well, he went over there and he kept all the newspaper cuttings, and then he came back to Australia. The rugby league started. Then he went over with the Kangaroos, and I had the scrapbook.
Your dad handed them. He handed them down to your father, and he handed them down to you.
Exactly,
did he? Yep.
Exactly right. So I had the scrapbooks, and I had a number of family records. I also knew. I knew 5 or 6 of the players that when I was a kid, my grandfather introduced them as his mates, and they all played with him. And so some of them were still alive.
Is this the Union or League?
Both, because he played more Union than he played League. 1901 to 1900 to 1903 he played Union with the Wallabies. Then he had a year on the boat building business. His father died. And then 1905, 06 and 07 he played Rugby Union, and he was the star player.
Rugby Union or League?
Rugby Union. At the end of 1907 he played his last test for Rugby Union, and the next couple of days he signed over to Rugby League.
And how long did he play league for?
Till 1913.
So who decided that they would call the equivalent of our Brownlow? Who decided they'd call it the Dally M Medal? How did that come about? Someone must have said. How did that come about?
Rupert Murdoch.
Did he?
Yeah. See what happened?
And how long's that been going?
Since 1980 or so.
1980, yeah.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure about that, but that'd been 1980 or so.
And they never had a medal before that?
Oh, yes. They had the Peter Stuyvesant.
What, the cigarette one?
The cigarette one. The Peter Stuyvesant Award was the Rugby League Award. And there was a lovely
Had to stop that?
Well,
they
what
had to
happened
stop-
was...
they had to stop that.
The Dally M medal that started in 1980 was secondary.
Yep.
It wasn't very important at all. It was Rupert Murdoch's trying to compete with somebody or other. Anyway, he started it off, and Newsweek asked my brother and my permission and so on. Of course, we just said, of course, go ahead. It wasn't much of a big deal, but then as the push
to get rid of cigarettes.
The push to get rid of cigarettes got a roll on. The Dally M started sort of rising up, and
it's a magic name.
It is.
It's a magic name.
Yeah. Well, good for William B. Dally. Thank you, William.
What about rugby union? You talked about league and union before.
Yeah.
Why was there a separation?
Good question. Was about supporting injured players. Remember that film Chariots of Fire?
Yeah.
Well, amateur status was a very big thing, and if you played union, you had to be an amateur. But the union, which had plenty of money, drove that a bit far. The poorer guys that played rugby union, if they got injured, there's no dole or anything like that. Their family starved. Well, not that bad because people bought them vegetables and chickens and fruit and stuff. But the old timers used to tell me about it. Anyway, they couldn't get any compensation from the rugby union. And they argued, and Dally argued on one for a mate of his once. You can't leave his family without food. So, one guy broke his leg, and there was lots. I'm not painting a very good picture. There was lots of injuries with poor people, and so rugby league started because they wanted payment for injured players, but of course the whole cry went up. If they accept money, they're professionals, and so Delly's father, who was the champion sculler for money, well, who gives the stuff?
Now, Delly, just quickly, you're a great Storm member, number one, yes, and they fate you, and rightly so. You and Molly. Who is the best rugby players that in your time that you've seen? Not necessarily with the Storm, but we always ask people about AFL, but we'll ask you about that.
The standout.
Yep.
The standout. I do have an opinion, and it's Billy Slater.
Why?
Oh, he's just an instinctive sportsman.
I reckon I could answer that.
Super intelligent on the field. He'd sum up all the other players and where the weak spot was. But he was a fullback. He revolutionised fullbackery, in rugby league. And
how? How did he?
Well, he didn't stick to his position.
No, you organised the troops. I used to go with you and watch it, and I know nothing about rugby league, but I watched him and I thought he was a standout. He read the play beautifully. He took risks. He was competent. He was coordinated. He could have played our game easily if he wanted to, I reckon.
Well, he went into, was it the Rexona or one of the soaps had this championship of all sports, and they had to pull weights and they had to climb cliffs and they had to run in circles and so on, and they had the 6 top people from different sports, and it was on television. It was
Cameron Ling from Geelong.
Cameron Ling was in it. Cameron Ling was in it, and
that'd be a walk-up start for anyone.
And you could see Billy. I mean, it's just like that chess thing, you could see the moves.
The Queen's Gambit.
You could see him watching, like the Queen's Gambit. You could see him watching the other players climb the big cliff, and so he did it. Boom, 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 boom. It was over, and Billy Slater won hands down against all the others. So anyway, here's my vote.
It's great. But there's pretty hard, though. It's like our games, pretty hard to pick them out. The Cam Smith, Wally Lewis, Mel Manning. I mean,
all good.
They are just...
Cooper Cronk.
Absolutely.
Now Tom Travojevic, James Tedesco.
It's not as violent, is it? Rugby league is nowhere near as violent as what it was back in the 70s.
No, it seems rough, but in fact there's very strict rules now about, you tackle somebody the neck or above.
Yep.
So
now, Delly,
I've
just got just 2 other things to ask you quickly. Yeah. So you embraced the gay marriage. I would say when the gay marriage legislation came in, making it legalised for people of same sex to get married, I would say that exponentially increased services for civil celebrants, because they probably weren't able to go to a church and do that hitherto before that.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Yes, that'd be right. It was I'll have to tell you that... oh, shit.
What are you doing?
Is it?
You've got to be somewhere, do you?
No, I'm trying to shut it off.
No, it's all matter. No, Don's rings. Don's rings seven times a podcast.
I'm
Don't worry about
really sorry about that.
So you embraced that quite comfortably?
Yes.
Or did you?
Well, we did, because long before gay marriage came in, we did commitment ceremonies for gay people.
I see.
Yeah,
Yep.
And I wouldn't say, well, I think most, but not all of the celebrants wanted gay marriage because, they knew gay people, they knew how much it meant to them. I'd met so many gay men in Dance Australia, as you can imagine, that I was sympathetic. Several of my friends, they lived as couples, so I was totally in favour of the gay marriage thing. But I think you're putting the finger on mixed motives here, and that is because the stupid government appointed too many celebrants, they wanted more marriages. So there was a burst for a while.
Yep.
But I don't think it got to more than 5 or 10% of the total marriages for a while.
Who's got the best strike rate, heterosexuals or gays, as far as marriage goes?
Oh, it's heterosexuals, 9 out of 10.
So the gays go through partners more regularly, do they?
Oh, no, I didn't understand.
No, I didn't either. Divorces, you mean?
Yeah, divorces. Look, I don't know, but my guess would be that it's pretty. The proportions are pretty close to
I
the
heard an interesting statistic actually yesterday, believe it or not.
Okay.
Nothing. I don't know if this is right or not. They said 50%, about 50% of marriages end in divorce. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's 47%.
Is that right?
Yeah, 47% end in divorce. But for a while, this is of interest, for a while that decreased down to about 30%. And it was when celebrants were at their best. Where marriage, they composed and co-created ceremonies that made people think and set out a roadmap for their future life. And
you ever knock back anyone from being married, like someone who wanted to marry their pet? Or
no. Sam, you've touched a nerve. I hate gimmicks. I just don't think gimmicks add to dignity. I just and people are trying to always
push the envelope
for funerals, or push the envelope into gimmicks. They think they want to invent something new, so they get the business, as they call it. So that's not the idea of it, as far as I'm concerned.
For me anyhow, Deli, you better mention your charming wife, Remy, because Ramy. Because she was a bit of a star in her own right. She was a thespian and a film. Was she?
She was in the famous theatre group of Dionysius in New York, and she ran she was part of a theatre group that was included Olympia Dukakis and other significant actors in Montclair, New Jersey, which is really a suburb of New York. And she spent most of her life as a theatre person, and she's had a very distinguished career.
Well, now, Don, we've spoken to some fascinating people over the journey, haven't we? No, seriously. And I tell you what, I didn't know about Afghanistan. I didn't know about Russia. I knew most of the things, but only very vaguely about this man's career. And he is a star, and he's a very, very... and I played golf with him on Monday, and I thought... Not sure how an 85-year-old man would play golf. Can I tell you, he was fantastic. He was far better than me in relative terms playing golf, and we'll probably try and do it every Monday now that I've had the experience. And I will not be going to the brothel. I'll be going over to the other side of the freeway. So I want to thank Dally Messenger III. I don't know where that comes from, but he's the great Dally Messenger's grandson, who the Dally M Medals named after, but he is a a star in his own right. So don't worry about his grandfather. So we appreciate you coming on, Delhi, and it's been fascinating chatting to you, mate.
It's been lovely to be here and talk to you guys. And thank you.
Here we go.
Yeah.
That's it.